ECOWAS is getting tough with Guinea after the military coup there. The Economic Community of West African States has imposed travel bans and financial sanctions on the country's new leaders and their families. Now, at a summit in Ghana, ECOWAS leaders also demanded the unconditional release of Guinea's President Alpha Condé, as well as a, quote, very short transition period.
The transition should not last more than 6 months. So 6 months, election should be held, because the election will allow the restoration of the constitutional order in the Republic of Guinea.
Now, these demands are the bloc's toughest response yet to the military takeover in Guinea earlier this month. The announcement was made as coup leaders in the country wrapped up a week of consultations with various stakeholders to map out a framework for a transitional government. We'll soon be exploring the implications of this coup for Guinea and the region. But first, let's recap what happened.
Jubilation in Conakry, Guinea's military takeover, was popular on the streets of the capital.
It's a victory for the young people of Guinea. We are really happy. We say well done to the Guinean army, to the special forces. Youth has won. Today we are all free. Everyone is free today.
Except President Alpha Condé. Shortly after the coup, the military released a video showing him in their custody, unharmed. His current location still unknown. Alpha Condé, a human rights professor and former opposition activist, was elected in 2010 after decades of military rule. He became Guinea's first democratic leader since independence from France in 1958. But after 2 terms, Condé changed the constitution, allowing himself to stand for a 3rd term. Opposition protests followed and dozens were killed. The military said poverty and endemic corruption had driven them to topple the president. The junta promised to install a transitional government, but they gave no timeline and made no mention of elections.
The first principle we have imposed on ourselves is to not repeat the mistakes of the past. The decisions that have to govern this new era will be taken in an inclusive and participatory manner.
Promises at the People's Palace in Conakry, but will they be as swift as ECOWAS is demanding? Coup leaders have yet to come up with a roadmap to return civilian rule to Guinea.
Joining me now is Niajale Bagayoko. She is chair of the African Security Sector Network and has done extensive research on security in especially African Francophone countries. Hello, Niajale. Nice to see you again. Now, many in Guinea have shown support for the military takeover. They say it was needed to counteract Alpha Condé's constitutional coup. What's your response to them?
This is exactly the matter at stake. In fact, we have we're in the situation where you have 2 illegitimacy which are competing one to each other. First, of course, you have this unconstitutional military coup, unconstitutional access to power with arms. But in front of this, you also do have this unconstitutional 3rd mandate, for which President Conté had run. So that is one of the reasons why it is very difficult for the population to consider that they are coming from a democracy to an authoritarian military regime. And this is also one of the reasons why there are not a lot of sadness nor regrets expressed to the seizure of power of the military against President Conté.
Let's move on to still on the military. They've been consulting with various stakeholders. Is that a plausible start to a transition to democracy?
It's very hard to say at this stage. What is, in my view, rather positive in the recent consultations and talks which just happened is the fact that all the communities of the countries have been associated to it, whilst Colonel Doumbouya is coming from the same ethnic groups as President Conté. And President Alpha Condé was used to use ethnicity and community belonging to nurture discourses of exclusion, especially from the Malinke community, where he is coming from, against the Fulani community. And the fact that the opposition leader, Cellou Dalein Diallo, has been very satisfied, as far as he said, about the talks he's been able to be involved too, is, in my view, a positive development. But it is difficult to say if this inclusive approach will pave the way to democracy itself.
Now, as we all know, Guinea is just the latest in a series of coups in West Africa. Is democracy in crisis in the region?
I think that the democracy is in danger, and the position which have been taken recently, especially by continental and regional organizations, are really a matter of worrying, because we saw that the coup which happened just after the death of Chad leader Idriss Déby, when a junta conducted by his own son took power in violation of the constitution, was not really condemned by the African Union. And just after happened the second coup in Mali in last May, because I think that this non-decision of the African Union was a kind of encouragement for other military to seize power. And we can see that indeed, in less than 1 year, around in 8 months, this is the third coup which is happening in Central and Western Africa.
Are you, briefly on this one, are you in a way suggesting that there could be more coups coming up?
It is absolutely a possibility because there has been also, first, there has been other leaders who have run for third terms where they were not allowed to by the initial constitutions, and also because there is also lots of dissatisfaction in a lot of countries and a lot of distrust from the populations. And also, lastly, because I think that the multilateral African system, which is meant to promote rule of law, constitutional change of regime, defense of human rights, have not been enough tough to impose those principles to its state member. So yes, I think that democracy is at risk today, but not only from the military leaders, but also from civilian leaders who are not respecting the legal frameworks.
Okay. Niajale Bagayoko, political scientist, thank you. And it's not just Guinea. Across Western and Central Africa, 3 more countries have been hit by military takeovers. There's Mali, Niger, and Chad. First, Mali, Guinea's direct neighbor. Since last August, there have been 2 successful coups in the country. Malian Forces mutinied in August 2020, forcing 75-year-old President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta to resign after months of protest. Then, in May of this year, another coup. The army stripped the next president, 71-year-old Baindao, of power after just 9 months in office. Vice President Colonel Assimi Goïta seized power. He's just 37, making him one of Africa's youngest leaders. Further east in Niger, the 2021 election of Mohamed Bazoum was the first democratic handover of power in the country's post-independence history. His inauguration looked to be in jeopardy in March when heavy gunfire broke out close to the president's official residence in the capital, Niamey. A rebel military unit had tried to reach the palace, only to be beaten back by the Presidential Guard. Within hours, the government declared the coup thwarted, and Bazoum was inaugurated 2 days later. And Niger's neighbor Chad saw the military seize power in April this year after the death of longtime President Idriss Deby. The army installed one of their own, Déby's son, Mahamat Idriss Déby, as the new president, ignoring and repealing the constitution and suspending parliament. Well, to analyze these developments, we have invited Coups onto the show. He's Director of Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research with the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center in Accra, Ghana. Welcome to DW News Africa, sir. Now, in just over a year, 4 military coups or attempted coups in Africa, what makes particularly West Africa so prone to military takeovers?
Well, I think West Africa is not more prone than any other region. I think West Africa faces a particular challenge with the unwillingness by the political elites, particularly heads of states, to comply with the norms and values inherent in the instruments that they have signed around constitutionalism, respect for human rights, the rule of law, transitional politics, and inclusive politics. So in all the countries that you mentioned, with the exception of probably Niger, we've seen situations where the regimes have tinkered with the constitutions, extended their stays, including La Côte d'Ivoire, for example, and that generates some discomfort, that generates some anger, and it is those frustrations that bubble up and contribute to the coup proneness that we are talking about.
Now, that clearly seems like a challenge. So should we be concerned that the latest coup in Guinea, for instance, could drive even more military takeovers in the region?
We have a very short space of time within which to act. That ECOWAS must take the lead and moderate what it means by constitutional takeovers of power. Constitutional takeover of power begins when the constitution is changed to allow for third termism, to limit the ability or access of opposition parties to the media, suppress civil society engagement and criticisms. All these come together to undermine and threaten constitutionalism and democratic processes. When we fail to protect these rights, we almost give the military carte blanche, unfortunately so, to take over power. But the military has no role in the politics and in the democratic behavior of West African states. The failure of the political elite, unfortunately, creates the space for them to come in.
Well, unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. Looking at the recent coups that we have, the military have always been involved in that, right? Now, Guinea's coup, however, seems to have popular support. Is there any evidence that a military coup can restore democracy?
No, I think what is going to happen is that the period of romantic engagement will end very soon. The military will come in with a transition plan. They will put down their uniforms, form a political party, stage an election, get the Supreme Court on their side, and hopefully steal the election and become democratic. Now, that sends a pretty bad signal. So West Africa, I guess, is going through a terribly unstable patch. But it's not all lost. With leadership, informed leadership from Abuja, that is from ECOWAS, and from the more stable, functional democratic states, I think we should be able to pull back from the brink. But it's going to be an uphill battle.
Coups with the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center in Accra, Ghana. Thanks for your insights.